The night in Toronto was one of those games that leaves a strange feeling for anyone watching closely. The scoreboard told a tough story, but the flow of the game revealed far more layers than a simple blowout. Playing without Jimmy changed everything about the Warriors' rhythm, spacing, and emotional balance on the floor. From the opening minutes, it was clear the Raptors were locked in, hitting shots at an unsustainable rate and forcing Golden State into a reactive posture instead of letting them dictate tempo. When a team is connecting on well over half of its attempts from long range, especially early, it puts immediate pressure on every defensive rotation and every offensive possession that follows. Even so, there are moments that kept the game from completely spiraling out of control. Steph carried the scoring load like only he can, reaching a point total that matched the best nights of his career. Performances like that are breathtaking, but they also underline a hard truth about this version of a roster. When one player has to reach that level just to keep things competitive, the margin for error disappears. No team consistently survives nights where the opponent shoots lights out and your primary creator has to be nearly perfect just to stay within striking distance. What stood out when looking beyond the final score was the distribution of points across the roster. There were 6 players reaching double figures, which speaks to ball movement and effort even in a difficult environment. Interestingly, the most productive scoring nights came from the bench, with Jonathan Kaminga and Buddy Hield providing a spark that changed the energy whenever they checked in. That kind of contribution from the second unit matters, especially on nights when the starters are under siege defensively. It did not flip the result, but it did prevent the game from turning into something far uglier. There was a stretch where the Warriors managed to trim the deficit to 14, and for a brief moment, it felt like momentum might shift. But the Raptors never truly loosened their grip. Every small run was answered quickly, and the gap widened again before any real pressure could be applied. Losing by 18 hurts, but context matters. This could have easily turned into a 30 or 40-point defeat given the circumstances, and that alone becomes a strange kind of silver lining in a game that never fully tilted back toward competitiveness. The absence of Jimmy was impossible to ignore, not just in scoring, but in physicality and presence. Without him, the responsibility on everyone else increases, and the limits of that approach become clear. Steph cannot be expected to solve every problem on his own, night after night. This reality forces the conversation toward who else can reliably step into larger roles and shoulder pressure when the primary structure is compromised. The rest of the season hinges on finding those answers quickly. Jonathan Kaminga's performance was easily the brightest individual development of the night. After missing a long stretch of games, he came off the bench looking decisive, aggressive, and fully prepared. Scoring 20 points in just over 20 minutes, while shooting efficiently, is not something that happens by accident. It reflects readiness, confidence, and an understanding of exactly how to attack within the flow of the offense. For a player who has spent time on the sidelines and navigated visible tension with the coaching staff, that kind of response says a lot. Moments like this remind everyone why Kaminga remains such a critical piece of the Warriors' present and future. He has the tools to be the secondary scorer this team desperately needs, the player who can collapse defenses and create advantages without needing everything drawn up for him. Nights like this show flashes of what the organization hoped for when they drafted him, and why patience, even when strained, can still pay off. Beyond individual performances, the structural issues on offense were impossible to miss. Too often, possessions devolved into perimeter-heavy sets with all 5 players floating outside the arc. There was a noticeable lack of presence near the basket, no consistent threat with his back to the rim, no reliable option to secure offensive rebounds. When shots miss, there needs to be someone occupying that space, ready to clean things up or force the defense to stay honest. Relying solely on guards and wings to chase their own misses is not a sustainable formula. This concern has been echoed repeatedly by Steph himself, and games like this only reinforce the point. Whether it comes from a current player earning more minutes or a future roster move, the Warriors clearly need a more consistent interior presence. Someone who can anchor possessions, provide physicality, and turn broken plays into second chances would change the dynamic of nights like this significantly. There were smaller positives as well, including solid contributions from players who made the most of limited minutes. Still, questions remain about rotations, particularly regarding size and matchup flexibility. Against teams that attack relentlessly and shoot with confidence, every decision is magnified. Defensive lapses, missed box-outs, and rushed shots all compound quickly when the opponent never cools off. Looking ahead, the road does not get any easier. The upcoming matchup against Dallas represents another serious test, especially in a stretch where the Warriors are still recalibrating without Jimmy. These are the kinds of games that reveal whether lessons are being learned or simply repeated. Execution, effort, and adaptability will matter more than any single scoring outburst. The season is approaching a point where every performance feeds directly into bigger decisions. Development, trades, rotations, and long-term direction are all intertwined now. Jonathan Kaminga's emergence in this game adds an intriguing variable to that equation, one that could influence everything from on-court strategy to front office planning. What happens next will shape not only the next few weeks, but potentially the identity of this team moving forward. As the focus shifts beyond that loss, the conversation naturally turns toward what this version of the Warriors can realistically become over the next stretch of games. Injuries and absences force truths to the surface, and one of the clearest truths right now is that this roster is at a crossroads. Without Jimmy available, the margin between competitiveness and collapse becomes thinner, and that puts immense pressure on internal growth rather than external excuses. Every possession starts to feel like an evaluation, not just of the game plan, but of the players themselves. Steph's leadership remains unquestioned, but leadership alone cannot fill structural gaps. His gravity still bends defenses, creates open looks, and keeps opponents honest. Yet there are limits to how much one player can compensate for missing size, missing physicality, and missing secondary creation. The Raptors game highlighted how quickly things unravel when opponents can pack the paint selectively while still closing out hard on shooters. Without a reliable interior threat, defenses are comfortable staying home on the perimeter and living with contested jumpers. That is why the minutes given to bigger bodies and how those minutes are distributed have become a point of frustration. What player shows the ability to score efficiently and impact the game physically? Keeping him under a tight minute restriction becomes harder to justify. The lack of a consistent presence near the rim is not just a theoretical problem. It shows up directly on the stat sheet in second chance points and rebounding battles. These are controllable areas, and fixing them does not require perfect shooting nights, only commitment and clarity. Jonathan Kaminga's role in all of this cannot be overstated. Performances like the one he delivered do more than help in a single game. They shift internal dynamics. Teammates begin to look for him differently, defenses start to account for him earlier, and coaches are forced to reconsider rotations. When a player returns after a long absence and immediately produces at that level, it sends a message that he is not just a developmental project, but a real option. That message reverberates through the locker room. There is also an undeniable business side to nights like this. Strong performances raise value, both within the organization and across the league. Whether the Warriors envision Kaminga as a cornerstone or as a piece in a larger move, games like this only strengthen their position. It creates optionality, and optionality is power when deadlines approach. The next few weeks will reveal whether the team leans into that growth or leverages it for a different direction. The upcoming road stretch will test more than just talent. It will test resilience, chemistry, and the ability to adjust on the fly. Facing teams with different styles forces adaptability, something this roster has struggled with at times. Against faster teams, transition defense becomes critical. Against bigger teams, rebounding and interior defense are exposed. These are not new problems, but without Jimmy, they become louder and harder to hide. Dallas presents a particularly interesting challenge. Even without some of their usual personnel, they bring a style that punishes mistakes and rewards discipline. For the Warriors, This game is less about the opponent's name and more about self-definition. Can they control tempo? Can they avoid long scoring droughts? Can they survive minutes when Steph rests without hemorrhaging points? These questions linger over every possession. What makes this stretch fascinating is that it feels like a fork in the road rather than a gradual slide. A few strong performances, especially from the supporting cast, could stabilize things and restore confidence. A few flat nights, on the other hand, could accelerate difficult decisions. Momentum in the league is fragile, and teams often do not realize they have lost it until it is already gone. The emotional component should not be ignored either. Injuries change locker room energy. Roles shift, expectations adjust, and some players thrive while others shrink. How the Warriors respond emotionally, not just tactically, will determine whether this group rallies or fractures. Veterans set the tone, but younger players like Kaminga define whether that tone translates into tangible results. There is also the broader context of the season to consider. The standings are tight, and small swings can have outsized effects. A short winning streak can change the narrative entirely, just as a losing skid can bury a team faster than expected. Every game now carries extra weight, and every rotation decision is magnified under that pressure. Despite the frustration of the loss, there is a strange sense of intrigue surrounding what comes next. The flaws are obvious, but so are the flashes of potential. When the ball moves, when the defense communicates, and when players attack decisively, this team still looks dangerous. The challenge is sustaining that identity for more than brief stretches. Jonathan Kaminga embodies that tension perfectly. He represents both the promise and the uncertainty of the Warriors' current phase. If he continues to play with confidence and consistency, he changes the ceiling of this roster. If not, the questions only grow louder. Either way, his trajectory will be one of the defining storylines as the season unfolds. For now, the focus remains on the next game, the next adjustment, the next opportunity to respond. Losses like the one in Toronto linger, but they also clarify priorities. Effort, physicality, and internal accountability will matter more than any tactical tweak. The Warriors do not need perfection, but they do need direction, and the coming games will reveal whether they have found it or are still searching. Before we continue, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Dubs updates. Let's keep going. The Bay Area woke up buzzing with a rumor that feels almost too electric to ignore. Around league circles and social media whispers, the name Donovan Mitchell has suddenly been tied to the Golden State Warriors, igniting speculation about a seismic shift in the balance of power. According to the chatter, Mitchell has agreed to sign with the Warriors, a move that would instantly redefine the team's perimeter firepower and send shockwaves across the NBA landscape. If true, the idea of Mitchell in a Warriors uniform is tantalizing. Known for his explosive first step, deep shooting range, and fearless scoring mentality, Mitchell would slide into Golden State's system as both a natural fit and a disruptive force. The Warriors' brand of motion offense thrives on spacing, quick decisions, and constant pressure on defenses. Mitchell's ability to create his own shot while also punishing defenses off the ball could elevate that system to another level, stretching opponents thin beyond the breaking point. Around the Bay, fans are already imagining the possibilities. The thought of Mitchell sharing the floor with Steph and Curry opens the door to one of the most dangerous backcourts ever assembled, a pairing capable of detonating defenses from the perimeter. Defenders would be forced to pick their poison, knowing that a single misstep could lead to an instant scoring burst. Of course, for now, this remains speculation, the kind of rumor that fuels talk shows and late-night debates. Front offices stay silent, agents deflect, and insiders offer carefully worded hints. Yet the noise keeps growing, and the idea refuses to fade. Whether this rumored signing becomes reality or not, the mere possibility has already lit a spark in the Bay. If Donovan Mitchell truly joins the Warriors, the league may be bracing for an offensive explosion that reshapes expectations and reignites championship ambitions. Stay updated exclusively with the latest Dub Nation news. subscribe to our channel, and hit the like button to keep getting daily updates on the Warriors. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your input is essential for the Dubs community. Stay tuned for the next video.